we're joined here today by staff from the City Planning Department and the County Planning Department, Mathieu Menard from the city and Mike Inman. So what we want to do today is get an update on what's happening and just have a conversation, plenty of space to ask questions. And Jen's got her screen up. She's going to take notes. So it's a little bit less formal. And we're not going to go live on Facebook, but we are just going to record so that there are a few folks that weren't able to join today that we can share that with them. All right, so with that, I'm going to give an introduction for folks that may be new. That my name is Michelle Ubaraga. I have the pleasure of serving as the executive director for the Park County Environmental Council. We are your community conservation group. We work with the people here in Park County to safeguard the land, water, wildlife, and communities in Yellowstone's Northern Gateway through grassroots organizing and advocacy. The purpose of these conversations is to create more understanding and a shared language around all the tools that our community can utilize to protect our open lands, the Yellowstone River, wildlife, and our way of life. So we want to create this space where we can come together, learn, and talk. And as you all likely know, there's a lot happening in our community right now. We have been seeing more and more people retreating to gateway communities like ours to live near natural amenities, public lands, Yellowstone River, and Yellowstone National Park. And this is a trend that's happening for years, but with the COVID pandemic, the increased amount of residents in Southwest Montana is really quite remarkable. And growth at that kind of rate can lead to problems more traditionally thought of as urban issues, lack of affordable housing, availability of public transit, congestion, and income inequality. So now more than ever, it's really important that we work together at the local level to make sure we avoid some of those big city challenges and set out a vision for how we want to grow in a way that maintains our unique character, doesn't overly burden taxpayers, and protects our way of life. So I also want to just thank everybody that's participated so far in these conversations and submitted comments to the update of the Livingston Growth Policy, which has kind of been the hot topic. Want to share that as a result of the participation from community members, the planning board is really taking a hard look at that current draft and committed to making it better. So thank you all for your participation. A reminder on that if you have comments on the growth policy, you need to submit them to the city, and Matthew's here today, so he can talk to you more about how to do that. We've received a few comments to us, but we want to direct those to the city. We're always happy to chat and help think about comments, but they need to go to the staff. And I'm going to let both Mathieu and Mike give an update on what's happening and how you can get involved, what to expect for 2021. But before we do that, I want to lay out PCEC's policy goals, just as a reminder that we want the community to have more local control around development. We want to ensure that processes are in place for the community to weigh in on future development at both the city and the county. We want to incentivize residential development in our urban centers and invest in our downtown. And we need to find ways to disincentivize residential development in harm's way, in our floodplains, in the riparian corridor, and in our wildland urban interface. And finally, we believe that our local governments are going to be better if they can work together. And that's here, our city and our county, and we're grateful to have staff from both those governments here today. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Jen, and then we'll go to Mathieu and Mike for updates, and then I imagine we'll have plenty of time for questions. You can raise your hand to ask questions, put it in the chat. I think we'll be able to just go ahead and unmute and allow people to ask their questions. We've got a small enough group. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm just looking at, looks like we've got about 28 people. I see a lot of friends. There's both city people and county people, so that's great. Thanks for joining us. We're going to keep this to an hour. We'll stop at 1 because a couple of us need to get on to a couple of other meetings. I just wanted to say real quickly that Like Michelle said, we've been doing these community conversations for over a year now. And I think this is our 12th or 13th, I'm starting to lose track. And we started with meetings on the growth policy. We had two, just kind of general meetings talking about what growth policies are about. We had a community conversation on the Main Street program and invited the Department of Commerce to join us and people from the Main Street program. We had a conversation on traditional neighborhood design and had a professor from MSU, Ralph Johnson, join us. We had a conversation on healthy communities. We had Jesse Wilcox and Kathy Kostakis lead that. We had Paul Reichert talk about downtown planning and the importance of infill and redevelopment in downtowns. And that was Paul Reichert from Prospera Business Network. We talked about conservation easements here in the past couple of months, and that was Peter Brown and I am gonna forget her name.
Jessie Weiss.
Jessie Weiss, that's right, from Montana Land Reliance and Gallatin Valley Land Trust is where Peter's from. And then most recently we had Strong Towns join us, and that was probably our like fanciest going to a national nonprofit to talk about kind of the benefit of incremental planning and not getting, making sure cities and counties don't get ahead of themselves in terms of expanding boundaries and adding infrastructure and making sure that budgets are watched and city planning happens in a fiscally conservative way. So we're trying to hit kind of the whole realm of city county planning issues, and we're open to other ideas. So if you have an idea, send it our way and we'll get it scheduled. I think we're looking at the start of the year, doing these twice a month since we've got so much great stuff going on, and keeping them kind of consistent. And we like this Wednesday noon hour. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's it for me. I am not going to write on the whiteboard because quite frankly, this is my first time and it's not easy. I thought I could easily put together an agenda, but that's like the best I can do right now. So I'll take notes the old-fashioned way and share them later. So maybe it makes sense, Matthew, we've been working on the Livingston growth policy for quite some time. PCC has been interested in a new growth policy for, it's been over like 3 years now. We helped raise awareness. We did a petition trying to get community members both knowledgeable about the process and aware that the old growth policy was seriously outdated, helped raise money. So we're really thrilled that that process has been going full steam ahead for the past year. And not to say that there haven't been some bumps along the way and some concerns. You know, we have had some concerns about the process, about the transparency of the process, about how comments are being integrated or not integrated, and really the role of the planning board in all of this. And we believe as planners that the planning board has a serious role in putting together the growth policy and kind of needs to take that role seriously and to both take public comment, but to synthesize and disseminate that public comment. So that's their role. Hear from the public and then disseminate kind of ideas that they're hearing that they think will be best for the community at large. So there's another meeting tonight. It's the 4th in a series. And Matthew, if you want to talk about that agenda, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I can talk about that quickly here. So yes, that's correct. There's a meeting at 5:30 tonight. That'll be via Zoom. Those agendas are always available on the city website if you need the Zoom link. If you can't find that, send me an email or call our office and I can get that to you pretty quickly. This is the fourth meeting out of 4. The first 3 meetings were a lot of public comment, and I think that's been really great. It's really helped us certainly to see maybe what's missing from the growth policy, where we maybe missed the mark a little bit, or maybe where intentions didn't come through clearly. I do think it's been a little bit overwhelming for the planning board. So tonight is really a discussion on how the planning board would like to move forward with the growth policy. The city commission did set them a time frame of requesting that growth policy recommendation be completed so that the city commission could look at it in January. The agenda item tonight on the planning board is to basically request more time from the city commission to give them a little bit more time to look at it. I think now that we've gotten all that public comment, we're seeing pretty clear themes come to the top, and giving the planning board a little bit more time will give them some time to make recommendations based on their theme. As Jennifer noted, that really the role of the planning board is to be a public body between the city commission and the public, as well as make recommendations and guide that process for both the city commission and the city staff. And so by state law, they need to make a recommendation on the planning board or from the planning board to the city commission. So tonight's going to be a discussion on how they would like to do that and how they would like to start making recommendations on potential changes or things they like or don't like about that growth policy. Public comment is obviously welcome at all times, and you can send those to me, which is just planning@livingstonmontana.org. And those get passed on to the planning board and the consultant, or make verbal public comments at the planning board meeting. But tonight is definitely a meeting to try to figure out a way to move forward in the planning board beginning to formulate those recommendations to the city commission. Hopefully that covered everything that Jennifer wanted me to cover there.
Yeah, that's terrific. So we'll look forward to participating tonight and really give you a lot of credit for taking this project midstream. It's not easy taking picking up a project after it's been worked on for so long. So thanks for your work, Matthew, and we certainly appreciate the planning board's work on this.
And speaking of work, I should mention as well, basically city staff has gone through every piece of public comment line by line and made basically a draft, strike through underline draft, to try to hopefully get the planning board moving forward on recommendations. That is also available to the public, and the link to that, it's too large to send via email, but the link to that where you can download it is in the planning board agenda for this evening. So it's definitely something to take a look at if you're interested. It was basically city staff trying to incorporate as many recommendations from the public as we could into that document. Obviously, there's some conflicting or competing public comments that we can't work everything in, and it won't be verbatim. It's basically a translation of that public comment into a framework that we hope works for the growth policy. What we're hoping is that the planning board will take that draft and present it to the public and tell us where we need to change it a bit, or where we haven't translated that correctly, essentially. So that's what we're hoping the process will be moving forward, but that's up to the planning board to decide this evening, hopefully.
Terrific. Michelle, do you have anything to add to city planning board stuff? I know we had some concerns about the city planning board application process. There's 2 openings.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's good to let folks know that also tonight there's 2 openings on the city planning board, and there have been 3 applicants for those positions. One of the applicants is a renter and doesn't own their residence, and as a result has been deemed ineligible to sit on the planning board. I think that's just important for the community to know, that's I think problematic from a standpoint of, you know, the planning board. We want to make sure that we're having diverse representation of everybody impacted by growth and development in our community, and you know, learning that folks that rent are not eligible was a bit of a shock, but you know, we understand the city's position on that and have looked at the statute, which you know, is likely an unconstitutional statute in violation of equal protection. But the city is interpreting the statute as it sits on the in the code, and so I think that's up for discussion, and we'll look forward to potentially convincing the city to interpret that statute differently.
Michelle, can I just make one thing very clear, just for people that aren't quite as well versed in law as you are? When Michelle is referring to the code there, that comes from state code. It's not a city rule that the city is enforcing. Or the city is enforcing it, but it's not a city rule, it's a state law. But it's certainly worth a discussion. I totally agree.
And I can add to that too here quick. So it is a state law, you know, it's in Montana's planning statutes, but many communities have felt that that is clearly old language and have chosen to ignore that old language, which is, in some people's opinion, racist and discriminatory. The communities that have chosen to ignore it are Missoula, Great Falls, recently Bozeman. I'm on the Bozeman Planning Board. I'm also Bozeman City Commissioner. We just got a city attorney opinion because we're in a similar position here that we want to get a renter on our planning board. It's really important, like Michelle said, to have that perspective on our planning board when we're having so many issues with affordability and housing affordability. So not to say that that's what drove the opinion, but our city attorney ruled that this is clearly unconstitutional and therefore encouraged the city commission to go ahead and accept that application and process it and potentially appoint a renter to our city commission. So it's not across the board that cities are choosing to follow that statute.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I think we dove right into like a sticky issue, but it's important to just share, I think, with the community. That is something that is a topic that we're discussing right now. I think it's good for folks to know, and certainly, Matthew, don't expect you to, you know, have a answer on that. This is not your it's above your head a bit here, so do not want you to, so just to say that. And then to maybe ask you, Matthew, if there are, I know you've been doing a lot of other work, and if there are other things, you know, we can talk about beyond the growth policy and what that timeline looks like for implementation of the growth policy, and what other good things you guys are working on in the planning department that would be good for folks to hear.
Yeah, I have quite the list here. We are extremely busy. Me being relatively new, and I didn't actually introduce myself, so I should probably do that. For those of you that don't know me, I am the new-ish at this point Deputy Director of Planning for the city. I've been here about 6 months now. So yeah, I'm free from the shackles of doing building permitting, so I have a lot of free time. So we've been working on a lot of zoning issues. I'm going to circle back to the planning board quickly. We do, after probably about 3 months, have a county appointee to the planning board, and that position has been ratified at this point. So we do now have county representation on the planning board, on the city planning board, and I can see that she's in the meeting today. Her name is Taya Cromley, and I hope I pronounced that right. So we're very happy to have her, and we're hoping that she can provide some great representation for the county, especially as we move forward on potentially looking at extraterritorial jurisdiction. So we're very happy to have her. So that is an update for the planning board as well. Other things we've been working on aside from growth policy, the city did adopt a zoning amendment to allow ADUs on every parcel in the city that is zoned R1 or R2. Really, again, focusing on infill and affordable housing, especially for renters. I am a renter, so I definitely understand the crunch that's happening there. That was adopted in November. The appeal period ended December 5th, so that ordinance is officially in place. So people are now allowed to apply to build an ADU or an accessory dwelling unit, mother-in-law suite, they're often called, on their property. If you've been paying attention to the city commission, there's a lot of not very exciting zoning type cleanup amendments that we've been doing, more administrative stuff, how things get noticed. Defining setbacks was the latest one. Nothing particularly exciting, but it makes it easier for the zoning to administer, and it makes it easier for the public to understand, hopefully. We continue work with the zoning commission on the large format retail ordinance. I know that has been a very long process. It continues to be moving slowly, but we're trying to move it forward. Hopefully we'll at least see bits and pieces of that come into the zoning in a shorter time frame. But it is something that will continue to be discussed in the new year with the zoning commission. The city just released a Trails and Active Transportation Plan request for proposals, looking for bids to begin a process to do a Trails and Active Transportation Plan. I will be the project manager on that, so we are hoping to get that moving forward. The bid period ends January 8th, so we're looking at, if we get an acceptable bid, that to be in front of the city commission for bid acceptance or for bid award in February, and hopefully starting that March, April. That's really exciting, and we'll hopefully focus on both trails and bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Jennifer Magic, who has been working on a downtown plan that should be starting up again. I know there were some COVID delays with that, and especially with the utilization of MSU students, and she can speak to that more than I can. HRDC is working on the beginnings of a housing inventory and plan. The city has dedicated $50,000 to that through the COVID funding. So hopefully that will start up here soon as well. Let's see, Conservation Board, and I know Jonathan is on that board, and I saw Michael DeCellis has been working very hard on getting a recommendation to update the night sky protection ordinance to the city commission. Hopefully that will start moving forward in the new year as well. I'm not sure who will be managing that project, but that might also come through the planning department. But that will affect lighting in the city. Otherwise, we've been working on the growth policy, obviously. If that gets approved, there are some very large projects in the growth policy that will probably start moving forward in the next year or so, including large-scale updates to the zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and starting to explore regulating the extraterritorial jurisdiction, also known as the donut. So that is the update I have. It's been busy, but it's a good kind of busy, I think, and I'm happy to answer questions at some point on anything you may want to ask about within that framework.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That is an incredible amount of work. We're grateful for all you're doing and for the update. And I have a little company here. This is Mario. I think that maybe before we dive into questions about the city, if we can invite Mike Inman to give an update on the county. Does that sound good, Jen?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're good,
Okay.
Mike.
Sorry, I don't have
Thanks,
a camera
Mike.
that's en route, so to speak. Although considering we're looking at countywide zoning, maybe I shouldn't show my face as often as I'd like. So planning board tomorrow, 4 o'clock. We have a fully functioning board. We had 3 new appointees that their first meeting was last month. We'll be doing some interviews on some other board members because we have a few positions that their term limit's up, or not term limit, but their duration for their stay on the board is up. And so we've got a few additional applicants that submitted. So we'll be conducting interviews, and the commission will be making a decision relative to a few additional positions before the January meeting. But with a fully functioning board, we are diving into conflict mitigation. And for those of you who are unaware, we have had a draft countywide zoning district available to the public, and we've been slowly kind of taking that under consideration. It was presented just over a year ago to the planning board at the time. We ran into all sorts of issues. It was put on hold. The board wanted to look at the scope of the district and the regulations to see if there was room to expand. Then COVID hit, our ability to meet kind of slowed down. The commissioners at one point asked the board to stop moving forward with consideration of the zoning district because they felt that it was unequitable to only be able to work remotely and limit people's ability to participate. And that was reversed over the course of the summer. We then had we had some board members resign, and we went through an advertising process. And so long story short, last month was the first time the board has looked at the content, and moving forward, we're operating kind of in an informal manner. The county commission has not determined to move forward with countywide zoning under state law. That process is very specific. This is the board considering this concept and district, and they're moving forward in an informal manner, although they have identified kind of the process that they would like to pursue. So this month and the next few months, the board itself is looking at the content of the draft, and they're going to go through it and come to some sort of consensus, and it may result in some modifications based on public comment we've received so far and the board's analysis and consideration of the district and regulations. They will also be looking at the district boundaries. There is some question as to whether we should include Cook City, Silvergate, and the community Gardner because those are urban centers, and there's questions as to whether the district as it stands and the regulations should apply to those areas. Once the board kind of comes to consensus, we are then going to kind of put forward the draft to the public. Members of the board and county staff will participate in community group meetings via Zoom, whatever way we can come up with to try to facilitate discussions about the draft and solicit feedback. We'll make it available as widely as possible. We'll put it in different chambers and community places throughout the county, make it available on our website and electronically. And then spend probably this winter and spring really honing in on feedback. And the goal for the board will be to generate as much comment as they can, and then early summer and even through the summer, they'll go through and analyze all that comment. And at that point, they'll be in a position to make a determination as to whether they need to modify the draft based on those comments, and then whether or not they want to make a recommendation to the county commissioners to move forward formally. If they do make that recommendation, and if the commission does accept that recommendation, then they would start the formal process of considering the zoning district and regulations under 76-3201, which is the process for considering countywide zoning in our jurisdiction. So and if they start that process, the last zoning district that we created at the county level took about 11 months from start to finish to go through that process. So we're at the very beginning stages of the public participation and process. So if people have questions, they can contact us at any time. more members of the board show up to the board or contact their county commissioners if they want to provide any feedback or offer suggestions.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And there is a planning board meeting on Thursday evening. I'm wondering if somebody can drop a link in the chat box there for folks. Go ahead, Jen. Should we, I don't know if you have anything else you want to ask Mike to cover, or if we should open it up to questions.
Just quickly, Jonathan dropped the agenda for tomorrow's planning board in the chat box. And just hats off to Mike Inman. You've got your work cut out for you. You have been a trooper through this conflict mitigation process and really implementing the growth policy process in general. It's not easy work, but we appreciate yours staying with it and, you know, kind of putting up with a real variety of opinions out there in Park County on what the county should or shouldn't be doing and next steps. So just want to let both you and Matthew know that your work is very much appreciated. So yeah, I think opening up to questions would be awesome. And
I want to also, oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to thank all the, I see that we have quite a few planning board members on the, and other board members on the call today. So, and city commissioners, just want to thank everybody. It's just too many people to introduce everybody. So thank you for being here and thank you for your service.
Agreed. So if I don't think you have to need to put your question in the chat, but if you want to say that you have a question, we can go ahead and make you live.
Yeah, just go ahead and unmute and we'll open it up.
I just want to pop on and say thank you guys. I'm at work right now, so I'm kind of doing two things at once. And thank you, Michelle, for touching base with that on the planners board, because that brings up a conflict with me. So thank you, and just I appreciate everybody's hard work and making these community meetings happen and giving opportunity for the community to have voice.
Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you for, yeah, thanks for being here.
Okay, I'd like to say something. I feel gratitude as well, and then I'm gonna try to stay on brand as the engineer and nerd if I can. So I'm gonna get weird and technical. It sounds like we have a whole bunch of really cool projects on the county and the city level that are coming across in the next couple of years, including Parks and Trails, downtown plan. Like, there's a ton of stuff going on infrastructure wise. And when you go through the growth policy, it looks like, you know, there seems to be a lot of opportunity to express our values by sort of showing where we are and where we want to go. And so specifically, and this is kind of for, but, you know, for Matthew and maybe Jennifer, for you, if you want to comment on this, is there a common place that all of these projects can start putting their data, so to speak, so that we can start understanding things like walkability scores and cost of infrastructure and visualizing new zoning changes and all that stuff just in a way that is all in one spot, that so that when we're spending these money, I mean, like Parks and Trails, I know is that we're out for bid on this walkability thing and everything, and or will be soon, I suppose. Sarah, maybe you can back me up, or Matthew, on the where we are in that process. But I'm just, and even on the county level, I'd just be curious. Sure would be great to be able to put this together in a way that we can all look at all the various impacts all in one spot. And so, you know, I've done some looking, like there's a bunch of packages out there like urbanfootprint.com. I know ArcGIS has stuff. Has anybody put any thought into trying to dump all this into one spot?
So I was thinking, do I still see Barb Oldershaw on the call? I mean, I don't necessarily have an answer, but I was thinking about We Will Park County and whether that might be a role for them. And then also Sarah, remember that mapping tool that we just found? It was like plan your community. It was after the Strongstown presentation, I started looking around on their website and at their resources. And they had some really cool mapping tools, Michael, that I think you'll love. So, and I'll see if I can drop that in the links too. It was basically like interactive for everybody in the community to kind of pin and put ideas, so that it was more of a planning tool than a data thing, you know, like, hey, it would be good to have a safe crossing here, or people could, it's just an interactive shared tool that somebody really clever created. So if I can find that, I'll drop that. But Barb, do you want to talk about We Will, and if that if what Michael's saying might be, you guys might already be on it. I'm not sure.
Oh, thank you for the compliment that we straight from Michael's mind to my task list. So yes, there. I was going to point out another community generated map, which is hosted by LiveWell 49, which is specifically a resource map for supports and services for young people, but it is set up as a Google map, and it's designed so that folks can easily add things to it. So it is sort of a community built resource in that way. We Will Park County is tracking a number of data points, but a lot of them are coming from outside of the community, like at the state and national level, not as much at the local level. I believe that is true, but what I also know is true is that we are in the process of revisioning it and seeing what we might want to do next. We rolled it out last November, so it's been out for a year now, and we're now looking into what future iterations we might want to do to it. So I know that having things in one place would absolutely be helpful to me, just as trying to be an engaged citizen and keeping track of which city commission meetings are happening and county meetings. So I think that's a really great idea, Michael. Yeah. And I think Jesse Wilcox just posted in the text line how to have how you can get something added to the community resources map for youth support services.
Yeah, thank
you. Does that answer your question, Michelle and Jen?
Oh, really quickly, this is Jesse Wilcox, sorry. Barbara Oldershaw, thank you again for the second day in a row pitching the LiveWell 49 youth resource map. LiveWell 49 is a local coalition of community leaders who are passionate about health, wellness, nutrition, mental health, and suicide prevention. And so that resource map that I stuck in the chat is the beginning of trying to map different resources available to the community. And it's all of Park County, but there are some Gallatin County resources mentioned there too. The focus is youth resilience, although it is not limited to that. But just a little bit of background information on what that map is and what the intent of that map is. So thanks again, Barb, for pitching that. And I put the link to the map in there. And then if you have a resource you think you would like to add to the map, I put the email for that in there as well.
And just for a brief clarification, I'm not suggesting that the planning and project related things that Michael was wanting to have in one place, that those are all necessarily the right fit for that existing map, but just to bring it up as a model for a community built shared resource.
Awesome, thank you. It's really good information to be sharing with everyone. And I see that Nancy, you've got your hand raised. Take it away. The floor is yours.
First of all, thank you everybody who's been working so hard on this for so long. I'm new to the party. I've been meaning to get involved, and I'm glad that I was able to today. And a couple of questions. One, and I'm not sure who should respond to this, but one is, does the community growth plan address vacation rental housing and the effect that it has on residents? And where is that going? And the other question is, I know that probably 10 years ago now, there was a group that came together of local business owners and residents who got involved with government agencies to actually support the building of low-income housing. I believe it's at the north end of 8th Street. The whole cul-de-sac of homes up there. Is there any effort of that going on locally right now?
Matthew, do you want to take on the vacation rental issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So vacation rentals aren't, well, they are mentioned in the growth policy as something to look into. It is something that I would expect to be, it's probably too specific to be really discussed in detail in the growth policy. It's something that I would expect to be covered very substantially in any sort of housing action plan that is completed. It is certainly something on the city's radar to look at with updating the zoning regulation to try to explore which way we go with vacation rentals. It is, out of all of the zoning issues, vacation rentals and parking are probably the two that are the most controversial right now.
Expand on that. Can you expand on that, Matthew? How they're controversial, what the ideas are?
Yeah. So anytime I shouldn't say anytime, but generally when you go to regulate vacation rentals, there's a group of people that don't want vacation rentals, and there's a group of people that either have the ability to have vacation rentals currently or already have vacation rentals, or believe that vacation rentals should be allowed for the property owners to either make the housing more affordable or profit off those vacation rentals. I'm not going to, take a side on that argument, but it often comes down very close to 50-50, where half the people want no vacation rentals, they're ruining the town, they're ruining the neighborhood, they're ruining the community character, and then the other half want, yes, vacation rentals, they make it so we can pay our housing payments, or they give us extra income, or they should be allowed under our suite of property rights. So you end up with this, you end up with a very contentious issue, especially when you start to regulate them. So that's sort of where we're coming down on that. It is something the city will look at probably in the near future, because it has come up from the public over and over again. And obviously it's something that is a concern for the city.
This is Mike with the county. I can add to that a little bit on the county side. So the county commissioner did approve moving forward with hiring a firm that will track and monitor all vacation rentals in the county. The idea is to compile that data over the course of a year and then try to determine if there's a need to address any issues relative to that. This came up specifically with COVID. And when we were first implementing some of the requirements at the state level, and specifically quarantine requirements early on in the pandemic, It was very difficult to contact individuals if they were participating as part of a vacation rental, because if the owner of that property didn't live on the premises, then it was difficult to know who is who. And so from a public health and safety perspective, emergency response perspective, and just tracking and implementing some of those early restrictions, it made it very difficult. So the health department at the county level and the health board started to talk about whether or not there was a need to track that. So the county will have that data available moving forward. Whether or not there's consideration to address it from a land use perspective could come up during the conflict mitigation zoning district discussion, and then it may come up just based on the information that we will start to see. There's discussion at the health department level as to whether or not we would require a license. Currently, the city of Livingston does not require licenses for vacation rentals. They're supposed to get a license through the health department, but that's very loosely enforced at this point, and the application fee is only $40, and so not a lot of incentive monetarily in terms of resources and paying for staff time. So we know that we have well over 1,000 of them in the county, including the city of Livingston. So we're in the beginning stages of kind of taking a look at that. I'm glad to hear that it's in the city growth policy, because one of the issues from just a community perspective is the county and the city will have to kind of work together to implement those. Otherwise, we'll end up with a situation where the county enforcement may look different than the city enforcement because of two different jurisdictions. And so we want to make sure that those are compatible in terms of moving forward.
Great, thanks, Mike. I just would like to note that we have one of the most active chat boxes that I've ever seen in one of these Zoom meetings, and there's a ton of good information there. So you have 9 minutes to go to the chat box and drag information and copy stuff down. And we do have 9 minutes left, so I don't see any hands raised right now, but if you want to just speak up, if you have questions, that is cool. Maybe Nancy, do you still have another question?
I had a second question that maybe nobody is prepared to address, but that was about any public-private partnership efforts to build more affordable housing in the community, in the city or in the county. Does anybody know of anything like that going on?
I know that in the county, HRDC is moving forward with a project in Gardner that will result in 32 additional units. You know, that would probably be it in terms of just concerted efforts in the county. I know that Gardner's kind of the big one when there's folks talking about affordable housing and moving forward with those projects. Countywide, not as prevalent, but I know there's probably more in the city.
And we do have Barb Oldershaw from the Park County Community Foundation on the call, not to put you on the spot, Barb, with your beautiful scarf, but do you want to give an update on what Pccf is doing with regards to affordable housing?
Sure. So a couple things I want to say about that. There are some projects happening already in the city. HRDC has the Livingston cottages, which are up on West Reservoir, and there's the Blue Bunch.
I think. Bunch.
Blue Bunch, yeah, sorry, thank you. The Blue Bunch flats, which is at the old hospital site. So those are both recently developed housing for folks at particular income ranges. On behalf of Becky, the senior center, I should share that there's a couple apartments that are coming up at the senior center that are also at reduced rental rates. What the Community Foundation is working on in partnership with HRDC is a project at the countywide level, and also we're going to be doing a similar version for the city of Livingston, which is identifying our certain what are the particular housing needs, and what mechanisms and strategies could we use to be meeting those. Both of those processes are, we're not at the solution point yet. HRDC is currently in the process of completing, excuse me, a housing assessment, and based on what is surfaced in that housing assessment, we're going to start looking at that in February and March to see what the specific nature of the problem is, and from that be able to more easily identify appropriate solutions. Feel free to reach out to me directly or to visit the Community Foundation website, which is pccf-montana, pccf-montana.org. And if you search for housing, it'll take you to the page.
Great, thanks, Barb. That's been
You're
a
welcome.
great resource, and really have learned a lot about affordable housing thanks to a lot of the work that you've done and those meetings you've pulled together over the past number of months. I'm noticing that Chris King may have had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, and this is in no way a plan, but just an intention, that in a business owner coalition for community health meeting this morning, we talked about how difficult it is to have a thriving business when your employees can't live in the community. And so there's definitely some express preference for some of the larger business owners in town who want to help fund affordable housing so their staff can live in this community. So there's definitely a will from business owners. And so I think that there's already some great groundwork for those public-private partnerships when some of the plans are in order. So I just wanted to add that positive intention, and also thank everyone very much for all of your hard work on this incredibly complicated issue in our very divided and diverse community. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, really quickly, Jennifer, I had a question, and I'm sorry, I can either wave or clap, but I can't raise my hand for some reason. This is Jessie Wilcox. And this might be a big question for 4 minutes left in the meeting, but I guess my question came from Mike's comment about the vacation rentals and about how the city and county will need to work together. So I really appreciate that Taya has joined the planning board. I am also a member of the city planning board. So Taya, I'm excited you've joined us, and we'll meet tonight at our meeting, I think. But maybe this question is for Matthew and Mike. How and when do you see the city and the county working together on issues similar to what Mike mentioned with the vacation rental and other projects that might require city-county collaboration, further than having a county planning board member on the city planning board?
Mike, do you want to start with that, or do you want me to start?
I mean, I could start just from the county perspective. I think it's gonna, with the short-term rentals, collaboration is gonna be pretty paramount, just given the nature of any potential regulation. It really is gonna fall, it's gonna depend on what we try to do. So for example, if the county health department and our lead sanitarian or health director decided that they wanted to require a more robust permitting system for vacation rentals, and some local jurisdictions will do that. So there's the state licensing permit, which is the $40 permit right now, where you're supposed to be licensed as a short-term rental, and that's essentially administered at the county level, but it's required through the state. If the county were to adopt a more robust permitting system, it's really going to beg that collaboration, because if let's say we did that and we required a permit for every vacation rental in the county, and the city operated differently, it's going to create problems when it comes to enforcement. So for example, you're supposed to get a permit and you live in the county and you don't get it, the county attorney's office may enforce that requirement different than the city, especially if one or both have different perspectives on whether or not they feel that that's applicable. If it's a land use issue and we're looking to adopt regulations that would regulate it as a land use, even then it may be different. The county can't regulate within the city and the city can't regulate within the county. So if the county were to move forward with zoning to deal with vacation rentals as a land use, you may be able to put one in the city and not have to deal with any of those things. And it's similar to building right now in the county versus the city. But I would think that if we have identified those impacts, we're going to want to make sure that we're collaborating so that you're not creating incentives to do it in the county versus the city or vice versa. And that's where counties and cities really need to work together.
Yeah, and just to sort of piggyback on that, I think housing is a great example of that. If you don't coordinate with housing, especially from the city perspective, potentially what you end up doing is incentivizing development outside of city limits, so into the county. We've seen this. If you look at Bozeman, they've experienced very rapid growth and very rapid housing price increases, which has pushed a lot of development towards the county area. It's also had knock-on effects for communities like Livingston and Manhattan and Belgrade, which were more affordable communities and are seeing rather large spikes in their housing prices. So we want to make sure that anytime we do any sort of large-scale regulatory update, that we are working with the county and making sure that we are not causing some sort of unintended knock-on consequence by the decisions we make that may be contrary to our intention from those decisions. So something like a very large or complete rewrite of the zoning regulation, we need to make sure that that at least runs through the county at some point to make sure that they're not concerned about anything we're doing there. There are certain regulatory items where we have to work with the county. The county subdivision regulations require that if there's a subdivision application within a certain distance of city limits, that needs to be run by the city. If we are going to set up what is basically called extraterritorial zoning, basically state law allows the city to zone within, for a city of our size, within 2 miles of the city limits. That's going to have to be basically agreed upon and worked through with the county as well. So there are things that we're required to work together, and then there are items that we should work together to make sure that we are not doing something that is going to have consequences for the other entity. Vacation rentals are a great example. Housing is a great example. A lot of land use issues. If the city does something and the county's not on the same page, we could end up with some pretty severe unintended consequences.
Okay.
Thanks, Matthew. And Mike, I think we're going to wrap up here, but I think some good potential topics for future meetings. I wrote down vacation rentals and I think city-county cooperation. And I would add to that too, real quickly, regional impacts. I don't know if anyone's driven along 287 North and seen the amount of development in Broadwater County as a result of how much Bozeman is growing, but it's not just city and immediate county. It extends further as well. We're automobile-centric society, that's for sure. So Michelle, are you ready to sign off?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for this excellent conversation, for all the participation from our city and our county and planning board members. It is really a testament to all of your work and how much everybody cares about this place that we're showing up here and having these conversations together. So thank you. And let's be in touch about the next conversation. I look forward to seeing many of you at the upcoming planning board meetings. With that, I think we'll say goodbye, and we'll copy the chat, and the meeting is recorded for those if we want to share it with somebody who was not able to attend here today. So thank you all for all you do, and we'll see you soon.